Hi, I wanted to make one last video before the year ends talking about my favorite K-pop projects of the year, so this is it. I am very much an albums person, more than a playlist person, so every year I do have a lot of albums that I gravitate towards a lot because I listen to them in the right moment or they just boost my energy or my emotions. But surprisingly, this year only 2 K-pop albums made it to my top 10 albums of the year overall of every genre. And I was surprised because I mainly listen to K-pop. My channel is obviously focused on K-pop, so I had to go back and sit down to review every K-pop album or EP that I really like this year, and here they are. I am gonna give a short review of every album, and although I wouldn't like to rank them, I am in my pitchfork era, so I am making ranks of everything that I consumed this year, so let's start. I tried to be a bit objective and honest with this list. zerobaseone is one of my favorite K-pop groups. Before them, I was only in K-pop for the girls and BTS, so I do have a very special place in my heart for them. However, I have to be truthful and say I did not gravitate a lot towards Never Say Never. For being a group with very cohesive projects previously, my expectations for a full album were very high, but maybe I was too strict, because Never Say Never was a bit of a letdown for me as an album. The songs alone are incredible, I did not stop listening to them, but not in the context of the album. I would play my zerobaseone playlist and enjoy them like that, but whenever I felt like listening to the album, I was a bit hesitant to do so. Another thing that I was let down by, but honestly I was not surprised considering Wake One's record, was the fact that it was a full album composed mainly of unit songs. I needed the OT9 songs, and instead I got being a witness of the members themselves wanting to be part of other unit songs as a full group. To end this on a positive note, the songs are amazing, and as expected from zerobaseone, the vocal performances are even better. There is not a single song where they don't surpass themselves vocally. I became a loona around August or September of last year, and the main way that I got into them was by listening to one of their songs by mistake, but I absolutely loved it and became obsessed with their entire season's project. I experienced the release of chuu and Yuki Akari, and that made me an andteam supporter for life. However, seeing how the entire run for their Korean debut was managed by yves labels and yves, I was honestly skeptical. But I was proven wrong. Back to Life encompasses perfectly the vibe and sound that andteam have been developing for 3 years now. Every single song, although different, does show what type of group andteam is. I do think the release lacks consistency and cohesiveness, but I am gonna say that I don't think it matters. When this is your debut project, I think you need a little bit of a mess and chaos to show the versatility and the range that you have as an artist. andteam have shown that they are able to have really conceptual and cohesive projects before, so I think this Korean debut did not need it that much. I truly am trying hard not to be biased, so if I were, I just know that Club Icarus will be higher in this list, but the truth is that after 1 month of the release of this EP, I didn't really go back to it a lot as a full EP. I actually found myself going back more to Dal instead of Club Icarus. I wish I could lie and tell you that I loved it so much, but I actually wanted more songs. It's been more than a year since Dal, and it feels weird that they have only released 5 songs as a group this year. I'm always in the constant state of confusion when it comes to artms because Uris have made me feel crazy for asking for more music when that is such a normal thing to do as a fan. It feels like you can't say anything about Mudhouse or about expecting more commitment to releasing music without them immediately coming at you and asking why you don't want them to be rich. And sometimes, it's okay to not want them to be involved in crypto. Anyways, if this were a song ranking, Icarus and Goddess would be on my top 10. But as a complete project, although not as fragmented as others I have mentioned before, this does feel very incomplete. Burn was a pre-release, but I feel weird about seeing it as the last song of the EP. I love that they are still doing short intros to their EPs because that also will always be loona's brand and an element that characterizes their music. I mean, one thing about the post-Loona projects is that all of the members are committed to the quality of the music. They understood that partly what made people love Loona so much is their amazing discography. There is not a single bad song in Club Icarus, I just wish it was longer. Again, I tried to be as unbiased as I could, so I did put Blue Valentine this low because, similarly to Never Say Never, I was expecting a bit more from nmixx's first full album. Considering that they released one of the best EPs of the year, and in my opinion, the best release in K-pop, we'll get to that later. Personally, I was expecting something different and more in tune with the experimentation that nmixx have shown. Blue Valentine does show the range and how different nmixx can sound, but I think they still stayed in their comfort zone, and I wish they went a bit more crazy with this album. Still, it does have a lot of replayability as a full album. I think nmixx are still incredibly underrated despite being a group known for their amazing vocals. I fear a lot of people are still hesitant to give their music a chance because they do a lot of things outside of the box, and the average K-pop stan wouldn't really get it. For that, I think I understand why they played it safe with Blue Valentine, but also considering that a lot of their listeners come from niche music lover spaces, as one of them, I think Blue Valentine needed a little push, a little bit of spice. Still, having in one album a song like Reality Hurts and a title track like Blue Valentine shows that nmixx's musical versatility is still way ahead of K-pop. I loved every single song, but as an EP, Only Cry in the Rain suffered heavily from the worst illness in K-pop, and honestly in the music industry all over the world, that is that no one knows how to make a cohesive project. I simply cannot dislike it because it has Skzfan13, but I do wish that chuu brought back a bit of that divine mood and sound that her previous projects have. In Howl, for example, although she explores different genres, there is a vibe that she is following, and part of it is reflected in the lyrics. However, in Only Cry in the Rain, although it starts beautifully with the title song, the mood is lost completely with Back in Town. Despite the fact that Only Cry in the Rain names the project, it feels a bit disconnected from the entire thing. I also think that it suffered heavily from being released in April. I feel like if it was released in September or October, the entire vibe of the EP would have been completely different, and I personally would have enjoyed it more. And also, like with Artemis, I wish ATRP were more committed to show chuu as a singer more than a TV personality. She has both local and international popularity, so I have no clue what they are doing. It's time to release the full album ATRP. Despite it all, it is still a chuu release, so it's still amazing. I do like that she shows like a middle ground between Howl and Strawberry Rush, songs that are still upbeat and cutesy, but keeping a more mature and deep sound. I listened to it a lot when it came out, and maybe the following 2 months, but then it got a little tiring to listen to. I think it was released at a right time in terms of the season. I feel like a lot of the times people don't realize how deeply connected an album or an EP is to the time when it gets released, in terms of the season or the month or the weather. This being released in late winter, close to spring, made it perfect. The problem was that as an EP, it just stayed there. I didn't put it in my rotation that much because the weather got hotter, maybe only for Devil Game and Step Back, but like with Never Say Never, I listened to the songs more away from the album itself. Starting with the title track, Blue, not only sets the freshness and nostalgia that songs like Dr. Doctor also explore, but also the brightness of Out of Love. I think this was a good project to put unit songs in, and the units were paired up perfectly. The balance in the energy and the concept and the sound for every song fit the members flawlessly. I need to preface this by saying that I am not even close to being an NCT or Wish stan. Damn, was this pop-up one of the best releases of the year. The title track was laced with something. I couldn't stop listening to it when I listened to it for the first time. I think I looped it for like 10 times, one time, because of how fun of a song it is. And the cheerful tone doesn't end suddenly in the second song. It has a really good progression, something that these days is rare in K-pop. I had not really paid attention to their songs before this EP, and I am glad I approached it when it came out because it is such a good example of a K-pop project with cohesiveness despite the different sounds and deliveries. The vocals are amazing too. Although the songs in this mini album are more on the upbeat side, the members deliver their vocals as if they were doing ballads, and to someone unfamiliar with Wish's sound like me, it was so much fun to listen to them. The biggest problem I had with it was that the songs were too short, to the point that some of them felt unfinished. And the entire EP ran for around 17 minutes, so at the end I just sat there wondering when the next song was coming. Since last year, P1 Harmony have been on a roll in my music library. One of my favorite K-pop albums of last year, and one that I played constantly all year round, was Killing It. With that, the excitement for anything that P1 Harmony releases has solidified completely. The members mentioned working on this album while on tour, and how hectic it was, and the album reflects completely, but not in an unorganized way. Remember how I said that sometimes you need a little chaos in an album for it to click? I think this is a great example of that. Starting with I expected that the vibe and sound of the album will be exciting, and was not proven wrong. My favorite part is the fact that the album goes from a song about showing who P1 Harmony are, to Pretty Boy, a song about reclaiming something that has been used to humiliate or offend them as idols and as Asian men. All this while still keeping their electronic, hip-hoppy infused sound, with lyrics where the members all boast over their talents and remind everyone of their impact in the industry. A good/bad thing of this album is that it is something that you have to listen to in a specific mood, otherwise it gets quite tiring. They finally released a full EP! I honestly just have to say that the only reason why this is kind of halfway through this list is because it was released around a month ago, at the time that I am writing this video. Still, it is such a cohesive first EP for a group that 1. Has been releasing and promoting quality singles, and 2. Has an identity of being a group not set by gender and genre boundaries. I think it gives me a similar vibe as Back to Life by andteam, in the sense that because it is the first full release from xlov, it feels like they are trying to show different sides and also set an expectation to what they will release in the future. The songs are fun, and there are some very enjoyable runs and transitions, like when it goes from Riz to Dirty Baby. Also, out of all of the projects that I mentioned in this video, I think Unlove has the best closing track with Drip Drip, because it ends in both an exciting and heartfelt tone. I know this is barely their first full EP, but I still wished it had been longer, considering they really only had been releasing singles before this project. I have to be honest, I really didn't like his style when it was pre-released, but I did like Pretty Please, so I was kind of on the fence about this EP, but I was completely sold with the title track alone. I had some opinions about the visual concept being a little boring and washed out for such a fun song like Focus, but when it came to the songs, I genuinely had no problems. I think this is how you do a first full EP. The vibe of the songs make the project feel cohesive while still showcasing different sides of Hearts to Hearts. They are not relying that much on one specific genre, that for a lot of rookie groups is the best way to go, because otherwise you make an entire music genre your entire musical identity, and it gets difficult when you try to do something different. They executed the different sounds so well, and the songs had really good progression between each other. If I had to point out something that I didn't like about this mini album, is the fact that style follows Blue Moon, and I don't think this is an issue of only this EP. I think it is an issue of K-pop releases in general, that either the title track is the first song in the album, or a pre-release track is the last one, and a lot of K-pop albums do both, and it's the case of this EP. I wished that maybe Blue Moon would have been the last song because it would have closed better. I got into this album a little late, but it still made it into my top because of how good it is. Despite its shortness, with only 5 songs and not even 15 minutes long, it still delivers a fresh and adorable vibe, paired with very hyper sounds. Songs like Do the Dance take elements from disco, but the vocals transform it into something more contemporary and sweet. My favorite of the album is Jellius, because this year I listened to a lot of hyperpop, future bass, and other mixes of electronic music with pop, and illit scratched that itch I had to listen to something fun and experimental in K-pop with this song. It is one of the few albums that I willingly search for instrumental versions of the songs because the tracks are so interesting and fun. Surprisingly, I don't have an issue with the length. I think in the case of a heavily saturated album like this one, shorter songs make sense. But the saturation and the upbeatness of the album make it lack a little bit of replayability because you need a breather after listening to something so cheerful. I think that it is both good and bad because you can't replay it as much as you want without ending up hating the songs or wearing them out fast. But it's good because it feels fresh every time you go back to listen to it. I wish more people paid attention to this release as an album and not only the promoted tracks. Opening with that little effect in X was the only sign I needed to know that this album was gonna be amazing. I will mention it later, but Close Your Eyes was one of the best projects to debut this year, and although a lot of very good groups debuted this year, I think the one that made the biggest impact on me, and who I know, in my opinion, will become a cult classic, are these boys. I think a lot of people were kind of hesitant when SOB was pre-released, but I got her on the first listen, and I knew that even if they did a different sound than what they were doing with their previous EPs, this EP was still gonna be good. And I was right. Tying SOB with Chic in the album shows that they were committed to show a new and different side of themselves and their music, but still were committed to the R&B sound that they started with. I do have to say that some of the vocal parts were not my favorite, but not because of the members and their voices. It had more to do with the delivery and the possible directions that they were receiving while recording. Because of this, the mixing of the voice sometimes feels off. I was a little bit scared that R&B was gonna become almost their entire sound as a group, but I like the fact that they explore it so differently in this EP. It was so good that I had to physically stop myself from looping it completely out of fear of wearing it out and hating it when it's just a month old. As a K-pop EP, it even made it to my top albums of 2025, all across genres and languages. You know I had to, and I might still be very biased, but Skzfan13 was such an amazing release. And the main reason it's because she features 2 artists that I love so much, PinkPantheress and Bratty. Yves is my favorite post-Loona project, and everything that she has been doing since Loop has been amazing and a really nice surprise. White Cat as a pre-release and an album opener is such a good choice because the mood is immediately lifted and followed through perfectly with Soap and Ivo. PinkPantheress and Yves complement each other perfectly. Their voices and vibes are such a dream. And Bratty in Ivo is like taken out directly from my most precious dreams. I truly love that girl. The error in the album comes with Do You Feel It Like I Touch? And the mood that the first 3 songs build is completely lost in order to give sound more space. I say error because I think that is the only way to interpret the songs becoming more mellow and not that focused on keeping an upbeat and cheery vibe. I don't think the sound Yves has been doing so far is known for being experimental, but with the last half, I think that's what the album does. Because of the title of the EP, I interpret it that way, that this is the soft error. Another thing that I wished that they had done differently is that I wish Study was an actual song instead of an interlude that leads to the last song of the EP. One thing I do wish is that Ex Machina would have been added to the album since the beginning and placed after Mom. It would have been an amazing album closure track for an interestingly composed album. I think if they had done that from the get-go, maybe the EP would have been in first place in my list. I haven't been this obsessed with a debut album since last year with Artemis and Dal. This is a masterclass on debut projects, and I am thankful to the me of the past for immediately checking it out when Close Your Eyes debuted. I knew that they were gonna debut because I was part of the people who thought Close Your Eyes for a group's name was a bit silly. And also, I watched Boys Planet. I already knew who Ma Jingxiang and Yeojun were. And I also knew Minuk. Back to the album, what a way to tie your concept to your amazing music. You can just close your eyes and enjoy the music. I knew it was good because I was in denial, but I always ended up listening to it like 3 or 4 times a week. It even was my most listened album on Apple Music for 2 months. Opening with a track named Close Your Eyes that both feels like an introduction to the album and to the group is such a smart choice in a debut project. It starts slow, but the title track, All My Poetry, lifts the mood despite still being an R&B infused track. There is an interlude of boy band pop songs that they execute perfectly, and then they go back to the smoothness of R&B with To the Woods, which has one of my favorite vocal deliveries of the year because those backward vocals were heavenly. I don't know what they put in that song to make it so addicting. And they close the album with such a positive and wholesome song like Upside Down. There are some runs and transitions that, although not that on the nose, I still think keep the album together and the flow impeccable. If I were to say something negative, it would probably be that I wish Encore had committed to debuting Close Your Eyes with a true full album. Just 2 more songs would have sufficed. Maybe a short interlude too, now that we are at it. I am not the only person who knows that FE304 Forward was the best K-pop album of 2025. It is by far one of the best projects that I have listened in the last 5 years, not only in K-pop but the entire music industry. I stand on what I said that nmixx are incredibly underrated because they have been releasing amazing music since debut and people have not understood it until recently. Their mix pop change up has become one of my favorite elements of their music, and so has the way they experiment with sounds, both in the track and their vocals, like in Golden Recipe. Despite the different genres and sounds, the entire EP feels cohesive, and I have realized that what mainly puts it all together is their vocals. It's not exactly that they sing in the same way in every song, but that they put so much emotion in their delivery that it brings out a painful nostalgia, like in High Horse that opens the EP, and like in Ocean that ties the entire project up perfectly. The EP ends with the same dreamy and atmospheric feeling that it starts with, and although the songs take us on a roller coaster, it doesn't feel like we are being swung around without direction, even in the slingshot. The way it works in the EP is so that it is a cathartic release and we are brought back ashore in the next tracks. My favorite song is Papillon, obviously. Again, if this were a song ranking, these 2 will be on my top 5 of best songs. Maybe even be the best song or my favorite song of the year. You can ask my neighbors how annoying I was with this song because of how much I played it full volume. Like, I was aiming for those speakers to be tiered up completely. In my opinion, the weak link might be Know About Me, but I understand its intention in the EP as something to hook the general audience and the average K-pop stan. I am still thinking about making a video about nmixx's music in the following months, so wait for that one because I have so much to say about their music. This wouldn't be a good album ranking without some honorable mentions, so I literally would just mention them and my favorite tracks in each project.
chocolate, taco and ice cream, kimchi fries, gochujang cookie, 저기 맛있는 음식들 모두 재우지 못한 일이 something new 상상이 다 싫어 눈부셨던 장면 위로 go go I can breathe 향기롭게 번진 내 기억 속 넌 I can't breathe 눈부시게 담긴 한 장면 속 난 영원해
시작할까는 관점
내 귓가에 들리는 듯한 너의 나긋한 속삭임 빗속에서 먹구름 아는 나를 꼭 If I tell them about us, break them new key That's why I'm always stuck on your mind No one can change it the only girl you dream about in my LOVE That's why
There were still so many releases that I didn't get to check out because I was busy or I needed to pay attention to them to determine whether they'll go in my rotation or not, or just simply because I forgot. And I remembered until now that they released something and it's already December, so of course I'm not gonna be including them in my K-pop albums of 2025. I hope from the bottom of my heart that next year is full of amazing music again and that you guys have very happy holidays and an even better 2026. See you in the next one.